how does this play out in the next 12 months? How does this all affect the election? I mean, like you said, they're weaponizing race, and it's the only thing they have. And so they're going all in on it. And like you said, they're trying to score as many goals as possible. And how does that play out in the election? And how does it play out in the next 12 months? Do they end up eating their own, which is something Dave Rubin thought that they would end up doing? Do they end up taking it so far that everyone wakes up one day and says, wait a second, we don't want to throw our history down the toilet? Or do you think this can get worse? Because a couple years ago with Black Lives Matter, we never saw this coming.
Yeah, I know. I mean, who would have predicted where we would be now? I mean, it is crazy to think about how this debate has changed. I mean, I am very much the opinion that I agree with Dave. I mean, I think the left eats its own. The left constantly eats its own, which is kind of, there's a strange sort of Schadenfreude in watching it happen. But I mean, you've seen people like J.K. Rowling, come out in favor of women, biological women are women, and she's now being cancelled by her own actors. And it's kind of entertaining to watch, because I'm like, this is what will always happen to you guys. You will never be progressive and woke enough. Eventually, you will have to draw a line somewhere when your own brain tells you that facts actually matter. And at that point, the progressive mob will come for you, because for them, science is racist, gravity is racist, the earth is as a whole is racist. Nature is probably anti-transgender. I mean, you saw some vegan activists try and stopping a wildebeest from being eaten by a lion, and were both hospitalized in Tanzania not so long ago. I mean, that's the kind of absurd level that we're at. And so, where do I think this goes within the next 12 months? You're going to have, first of all, I mean, there's this thing in the US called the election coming up on November the 3rd. And I think, you're going to have, I personally think the silent majority will come out in favor of Trump. And I'm not just saying that because, I obviously want him to win. The groundswell of opinion and fact and sort of feedback we've got as an organization in the US has been overwhelming. And that's coming from both minority America and, the suburban America and the white America that we plug into. So, there's a huge outswelling of support for a lot of work that we're doing. Our volunteer network has gone through the roof. I mean, it's difficult to describe. We're a small organization. This is the Blexit Foundation that I'm mentioning here, and we're a very small organization. We only have a few employees, but our volunteer network has just gone bananas. And as a result, I'm the treasurer of the organization. It's difficult to keep track of how much we're doing now, because it's just so much plug in, and this is from people of all races, of all creeds, of all colors, wanting to volunteer in all different states to do things like food drops, to do community cleanup, to do, after the riots, we deployed teams across numerous states to help people rebuild their shops. We've distributed cash to small businesses. And the support has just been incredible. And so from that angle, it's been actually really satisfying to watch. And I think that minority voice, and I think that the silent majority voice will be expressed in November. And as a result, I'm hopeful that I think by the time we come to November, that will result in a victory for Donald Trump. Now, on the other hand, what I do think there is that the margin of victory will be a really important factor, in Donald Trump. In Donald Trump's campaign for next year, because I think if the Democrats, are delivered a landslide defeat, it will be very much the same. And I think here's one we did earlier, Jeremy Corbyn in the UK. That the Labour Party in the UK is undergoing a purge of its Corbynite elements right now. You've seen Rebecca Long Bailey, you've seen Keir Starmer kind of try and exercise an awful lot of the Corbynite elements from his sort of cabinet bench. And the reason being is because Corbynism as an ideology, people like Ash Sarkar and Owen Jones and all these kind of guys on Twitter, are clearly not attractive to the majority of people. You've seen that kind of urban, white working class in the Midlands. You've seen the kind of working class labor roots from which a lot of the labor movement was drawn, abandon that ideology because it's now progressive, woke totalitarianism, which has very little to do with helping ordinary people. It's really just about trying to make everyone, virtue signal. And I think that model could well be played out again here in November. And I think the Democrat Party, if it slides to a crushing defeat, will have to ask itself, what place do we have in our party for people like AOC, for people like Rashida Tlaib, for people like Ilhan Omar, who have really led our party into this kind of aggressive, progressive socialism model, which now clearly has no appeal to the American voters. Of course, then you've also got a question as to, well, what role did Joe Biden have in our defeat? And I think he would have a huge one. But I also think you've either got a stale Democratic establishment, Pelosi, Biden, Schiff, or you've got an ultra left-wing, progressive socialist element. So both sides of the party are going to try and purge each other of each other. And as a result, you will probably have a Democratic Party civil war. They've only found common ground in this election because they both hate Donald Trump so much that they've been able to unite over this one point. Now, as a result, getting Donald Trump out of office is their number one priority. If they lose in November, it is going to be, get the popcorn, because you're going to enjoy watching these guys tear themselves to pieces, because they will have no idea which way to take their party. And in the UK, as I said, you've had that play out already, and it's been kind of quite entertaining in some ways to watch the Labour left-wing front bench and the Labour Party sort of social influencers, try and justify their own existence in the aftermath of what was the largest parliamentary defeat for, 80 years. So that's how I think it plays out in the next 12 months. And I think also when that happens, then a lot of this kind of nonsense rhetoric we're seeing around, BLM and the kind of revision of American history will die as well. And then it will try and find a place, of course, in the midterms, and it will try and find its place in the next election cycle after that. And it will continue to do so until enough of minority America wakes up and says, not in our name, which is obviously kind of what we're also trying to push forward from Candace's side. So I think until that minority awakening happens, you will see it continue to play out. And when it does happen, then that debate is over.